Hello from Kingfisher, Oklahoma. Today we're going to look at 5 things from Ruth chapter 4, and we're going to jump into 1 Samuel chapter 1. Well, as we close out the story of Ruth, I want to remind you that Ruth is all about the fact that God takes care of us. He took care of them as a nation, and he shows his love and care for the individual all throughout the story. We see God's plan in action, and we see Boaz do the right thing according to God's laws to pursue becoming the kinsman redeemer. And it sets up this idea of redemption, which we definitely need, and Jesus becomes our redeemer. Number 2, the closer relative is happy to allow Boaz to step into this place and marry Ruth because he's afraid to mess up his inheritance. You see, he had to raise up a son. Well, what if you only had one son? You would have no inheritance. If you had 2 sons, I suppose the second son would be yours and you could be fine, but you were never guaranteed that. So he's happy to let Boaz step in. And it kind of points out, number 3, that the line of Judah is most interesting. It's the line in which the Messiah will come. We know this because he already came, and we get to see the line. Matthew chapter 1 is a great spot. I think Luke chapter 3 is the other spot. But we see some very interesting people set up in this line from Judah. Now, if you recall correctly, Judah is Tamar's father-in-law, but through some trickery they get together and have Perez, and so he's in this line. Now Salmon is married to Rahab, and they have a child named Boaz. You remember Rahab the harlot from that they rescued from Jericho. So they have that. So Ruth's mother-in-law would have been Rahab if she was still alive. We don't know if she is or not. So when Ruth marries Boaz, they start having sons, and she gets down the line, and we see David is in that line. Well, we know David and Bathsheba had kind of a rocky start there, but they eventually have Solomon, and so on and so forth, all the way down to Jesus. We have mistakes in the past. We have a mess all along this family line. But I want to point out that Jesus works through the mess to be our Redeemer. So, pretty important to know that no matter how messy it's been, Jesus is willing to work through it to redeem us from our sins. But we've got to let him. Then we begin into 1 Samuel. And this is really what starts really kicking off the nation as a solidified unit. It feels like pieces, like tribes trying to take over their spots, and there's this story and that story, but now we start getting the nation's story again in the Promised Land. So we jump into this story. Number 4, there's a man named Elkanah. He has 2 wives. One is barren and the other has kids, so there's some tension there. Hannah is the barren one, so she goes up. She pours out her soul to God, just begging for a child. And she's going to dedicate that child to God. Well, the priest, Eli, thinks that she is drunk and wants her to quit being drunk and get her life together, but she promises she isn't. So he blesses her. And sure enough, number 5, God blesses her fervent nature, her fervent prayer. She gives birth to Samuel, who she does dedicate to the Lord, and he spends his time when he's weaned up there at the tabernacle, and he becomes a great prophet and leader. And that's how the book of Samuel starts, and then we see kind of his leadership with the nation as we go. Well, let's finish up Ruth here. Chapter 4. Now when Boaz went up to the gate and sat him down there, and behold, the kinsman of Boaz came by, unto whom he said, Ho, such a one, turn aside, sit down here. And he turned aside and sat down. And he took 10 men of the elders of the city, and said, Sit ye down here. And they sat down. And he said unto the kinsman, Naomi, that is come out of the country of Moab, selleth a parcel of land which was our brother Elimelech's. And I sought to advertise thee, saying, Buy it before the inhabitants and before the elders of the people. If thou wilt redeem it, redeem it. But if thou wilt not redeem it, then tell me, that I may know, for there is none to redeem it besides thee, and I am after thee. And he said, I will redeem it. Then Boaz said, What? The day thou buyest the field for the hand of Naomi, thou must buy also Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of the dead, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance. And the kinsman said, I can't redeem it for myself, lest I mar my own inheritance. Redeem thou my right to thyself, for I cannot redeem it. Now this was the matter in former times of Israel concerning the redeeming, concerning changing, to confirm all things. The man plucked off his shoe and gave it to his neighbor, and that was the testimony of Israel. Therefore the kinsman said unto Boaz, Buy it for thee, and he withdrew a shoe. And Boaz said to the elders and to all the people, You are witnesses this day. I have bought all that was Elimelech's, and that was Kilion's and Mahlon's of the hand of Naomi. Moreover, Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of Mahlon, have I purchased to be my wife, to raise up the name of the dead upon this inheritance, that the name of the dead will not be cut off from among his brethren, and from the gate of this place you are witnesses this day. And all the people who were witness and the elders said, We are witnesses. The Lord make the woman that is to come to thy house like Rachel and Leah, which two did build the house of Israel. And do thou worthily in Ephrathah, and be famous in Bethlehem. And let thy house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bare unto Judah, of the seed which the Lord give to thee. So Boaz took Ruth, and she was his wife, and he went into her, and the Lord gave her conception, and she bare a son. And the woman said unto Naomi, Blessed be the Lord, which hath not left thee this day without a kinsman, that his name may be famous in Israel. And Boaz is still famous to this day. And he shall be unto thee a restorer of thy life, and a nourisher of thy old age. For thy daughter-in-law, which loveth thee, which is better to thee than 7 sons, hath borne him. And Naomi took the child, and laid it in her bosom, and became nurse to it. And the woman and her neighbors gave it a name, saying, There is a son born to Naomi, and they called his name Obed. He is the father of Jesse, the father of David. And these are the that would make Ruth great-grandma, Naomi great-great-grandma. These are the generations of Perez. Perez begat Hezron. Hezron begat Ram. Ram begat Amminadab. Amminadab begat Nahshon. Nahshon begat Salmon, who married Rahab. And Salmon begat Boaz, who married Ruth. And Boaz begat Obed. Obed begat Jesse. Jesse begat David, who married Bathsheba. So you see all those famous stories all in a row there. And that's why it's included in the Bible. I sometimes thought, why would they include this story in the Bible? Well, each story has a purpose building towards Jesus. It's just how it is. Each story is purposefully there. 1 Samuel. Of course, we shouldn't be surprised at that. Chapter 1. Now there was a certain man of Ramathim Zophim, the mount of Ephraim, and his name was Elkanah, the son of Jeroham, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu. That's a different Elihu than in Job, by the way. Different fathers. The son of Zuph, unless the father has 2 names, I guess. An Ephrathite. And he had 2 wives. The name of one was Hannah. The name of the other was Peninnah. And Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. And this man went out of the city yearly to worship and to sacrifice to the Lord of hosts in Shiloh. And the 2 sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were priests of the Lord, were there. And when the time came that Elkanah offered, he gave to Peninnah his wife, and to all her sons and daughters portions. But to Hannah he gave a worthy portion, or some translate a double portion. For he loved Hannah, but the Lord had shut up her womb. And she had an adversary, and also who provoked her sore, for to make her fret, because the Lord shut up her womb. And as he did year by year, and she went up to the house of the Lord, so she provoked her. Therefore she went and did not eat. Then said Elkanah to her husband, Hannah, why weepest thou, and why eatest thou not? And why is thy heart grieved? Am I not better to thee than 10 sons? So Hannah rose up, after they had eaten in Shiloh, and after they had drunk. Now Eli the priest sat on the seat of the post of the temple of the Lord, and she was in bitterness of soul, and prayed unto the Lord, and wept sore. She's a good example. You need to go straight to God when you're upset. And she vowed a vow and said, O Lord of hosts, if thou wilt indeed look upon the affliction of thine handmaid, and remember me, and not forget thine handmaid, but wilt give thine handmaid a man-child, then I will give him unto the Lord all the days of his life, and there shall be no razor come upon his head. And it came to pass, as she continued praying before the Lord, that Eli marked her mouth. Now Hannah, she spake in her heart, only her lips moved, but her voice was not heard. Therefore Eli thought she had been drunken. And Eli said to her, How long wilt thou be drunken? Put away thy wine from thee. And Hannah answered and said, No, my lord, I am a woman of sorrowful spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but have poured out my soul before the Lord. Count not thy handmaid for a daughter of Belial, for out of the abundance of my complaint and grief have I spoken hitherto. And Eli said, Go in peace, that the Lord of God may grant thee thy petition which thou hast asked of him. And she said, Let thine handmaid find grace in thy sight. So the woman went her way, and she did eat, and her countenance was no more sad. And they rose up in the morning early, and worshipped before the Lord, and returning came to their house in Ramah. And Elkanah knew Hannah his wife, and the Lord remembered her. Therefore, when it came to pass that the time came after Hannah had conceived, that she bare a son, and called his name Samuel, saying, Because I have asked him of the Lord. And the man Elkanah and all his house went up to offer to the Lord a yearly sacrifice, and his vow. But Hannah went not up, and she said unto her husband, I will not go up until the child be weaned, then I will bring him, that he may appear before the Lord, and abide there forever. And Elkanah her husband said to her, Do what seemeth good to thee. Tarry until thou hast weaned him, only the Lord establish his word. So the woman abode, and gave her son suck until she weaned him. And when she had weaned him, she took him up with her, and with 3 bullocks, and 1 ephah of flour, and a bottle of wine, and brought him to the house of the Lord in Shiloh. Remember, it's the tabernacle now. It's not a permanent spot. And the child was young, and they slew the bullock, and brought the child to Eli. And she said, O my Lord, as the soul liveth, my Lord, I am the woman who stood here before thee, praying unto the Lord. And this is the child I prayed. For this child I prayed, and the Lord hath given me my petition which I have asked him. Therefore I have lent him to the Lord. As long as he liveth, he shall be lent to the Lord. And he worshipped the Lord there. So, pretty amazing story. God blesses her with a child that she prayed for, and she was so happy about that. And she gave him back to God. Now we're going to get to see, how does God use this blessed child for his own purposes? But you're going to have to join us next time, so catch you later.